I need somebody help, not just anybody help. You know I need someone help. When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now these days are gone and I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind and opened up the doors. Help me if you can, I'm feeling down, and I do appreciate you being round. Help me get my feet back on the ground. Won't you please help me?
Jim Fetzer, your host on The Raw Deal, right here on Revolution Radio Studio B, the 16th day of April, 2025, joined by Russ Winter and Joaquin Agopian for a fearsome threesome edition. We expect to be joined by a +1 Bill Bonatati shortly. I have a number of news reports that are highly disconcerting to share, where I begin with a report I find almost unbelievable. Jews have the religious right. Wow, look at this. It's been taken down. According to the Israeli Supreme Court, Jews have a religious right to genocide. I'm not surprised it's been taken down. Look at that, you guys here. I mean, I was all set because this is such a huge story to make it a centerpiece of our conversation. But we can do that even without having the story because the headline says it all. Jews have the religious right to genocide, in my opinion. This makes Israel a complete...
What's the source of that?
Well, I was going to play it for you.
Oh, you can't see? Okay.
No, see that, Russ, when I tried to show the video, it says it's no longer available. So I've taken it down. But in a way, I'm not surprised.
It must be YouTube. It couldn't be BitChute. BitChute allows anything.
Right. No, it is YouTube. It is YouTube. Joaquin, do you find this surprising? Actually, I do not. But to have it stated so baldly, your thoughts, Joaquin?
Well, the whole nation and certainly the government is so supremacist. Jewish supremacy rule. And so it's not surprising at all that they would excuse themselves from massacring a whole group of people and saying they have the right. It doesn't surprise me.
Russ, would you find it surprising? I know you asked for the source, but...
I think that it's basically genocide and a lot more check operations, rounding people up, taking them away in the middle of the night. I think that's coming too. We kind of talked about that on our last show. So I'm kind of nervous in terms of that aspect of it. Traveling into the United States, they sort of, they got an order out that if you're a foreigner and foreign national in the United States, you have to register after 30 days. I don't even know what that means because, in other words, if you're a student or you're working so it's just like registering foreigners. And meanwhile, you have a big economic collapse going on because tourism is 9% of the GDP of the United States and has fallen by about a third, about 20 to 30%. There's hardly any bookings to come to the United States. So it's just an oppression, a generalized oppression. Genocide is an extension of that. Where do you even begin? There's all kinds of measures.
Yes. Yeah, you're talking about that ID program that apparently the Homeland Security Department is putting out that within, I don't know, maybe 2 months or some crap like that, you can't fly without this ID. It's not going to go over with the people, that's for sure. And it's another step closer to one world government. Let's face it. The whole Jewish supremacy thing is that they're going to be the rulers of a one world government stationed in Jerusalem. and that we are all slaves to them. And so it's just one step closer. All of this is one step closer because they are God's chosen people after all. You know, it's the same bullshit over and over. And they have never been held accountable. So they're so emboldened by the fact that they're able to get away with so much.
The foreign thing is like carte blanche entry points. So that's how they do it. They start to say, you know, we're going to start with quote unquote foreigners. First it's illegals. And then they kind of go with illegals that are anti-Semites. And then they go with, you know, not illegals that are legals that are anti-Semites. And now it's just foreigners in general. So you see how they just kind of ratchet it up one step at a time?
Yeah, very good. Very good, Russ.
The next step will be American citizens that are so difficult or problematic. I'm sure that's
Trump is already saying he's going to ship American citizens down to El Salvador prison. He's already saying this.
Russ, listen, could you go on Yandex and see if you can pull it up? Jews have religious right to genocide, says Israeli Supreme Court. See if you can find it on Yandex, because, of course, Chrome, you know, is far less adequate than Yandex and has far more censorship, because I think this is definitely worth reviewing. Our next story, by the way, while Russ searches, Trump and Netanyahu plot Gaza's future without Palestinians. You know, this is his real estate mogul's mind, which is reaches a bizarre state, in my opinion. Trump and Netanyahu plot Gaza's future without Palestinians. It's difficult to describe how deranged reality has become. On Monday, the leader of the two governments most responsible for a seemingly endless stream of horror, the U.S. and Israel, sat down for a press briefing in the Oval Office, casually discussing how valuable Gaza is to them and how they want to take it over and control it, as though they're not the ones primarily responsible for the massacres happening there. We are witnessing the deliberate annihilation of a people, while those carrying out pretend it's just an unfortunate natural disaster, some heavy sustained winds blowing through the area. They want us to believe they'll be the ones to bring peace and freedom to the land and people they're actively decimating, as if to say, hey, just drink this and don't think about it too hard. It'll all be over soon. We're the good guys doing good things, and that's all you need to know. And while they keep piling onto the body count, I think that's a wonderful critique of what's going on here. Joaquin, would you agree?
Well, yeah, I think that, Jared Kushner, son-in-law to the president, his first reaction to the Gaza, the whole military onslaught by Israel, he was the first thing that came out of his mouth. Oh, what a nice opportunity. He thinks just like his father-in-law. After all, they both are Shabbat crypt members, you know. They're actually members of this Hasidic extremist group that is so ingrained with Jewish supremacism. The first thing he thinks about is the real estate value of Gaza. You know, I mean, it just boggles the mind that they are so inhumane and so self-arrogant about everything that they do and say. It's like, so, yeah, I mean, we have the Trump administration that goes right along with whatever Israel wants, they get.
What a crock. This is just outrageous. Russ,
Trump just said, well, we don't have to buy Gaza, we're going to take it. Now, since we're carefully documenting a lot of stuff on our show now, so I happen to have that clip if you want to hear it, or I could play it later in the.
No, I'm glad to. Yeah, go ahead and play it. Do you want me to give you?
Go ahead and give me the share.
I'll do it. I'll make you the host. Hang on a sec, Russ. There you go.
Okay, I got to go find. I got a lot of stuff this week. Jesus, I got a lot of stuff. Woo, big week.
Well, it's all kind of stunning.
Bigger every week.
Where is it? Well, here's one. Here's one. Negative view of Israel spiking in the U.S. Let's take a look at this story real quick. Okay, can you see the chart? Can you see the chart? Okay.
Not yet. We can't see anything yet. Did you find that Supreme Court video?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I don't know the source, but it's. I got the video.
Good. Yeah, go ahead and do the screen share.
Okay. Here we go.
Good.
Okay. I'll go to the other one. Negative view of Israel spiking in U.S. So things have really changed. Look at the change of total U.S. adults have a negative view of Israel, 53%.
Yeah, it's going to grow. It's going to grow.
Look at the left. Look at the leaning Democrats. They just really dislike Israel. Almost tempts me to become a Democrat.
I know they seem to be ahead of the.
Basically, the good news is that the boomers are dying off. They're the only ones that really support Israel in the United States. The boomers among the Republicans, and they're dying off. So I don't know what the future holds for Israel because it won't have any support. The young people, as you can see, younger people, even among the Republicans, 50% of younger Republicans have a negative view of Israel. Okay. All right. So let me switch over to the. Can you see the other?
Yeah. Play it.
Jewish ISIS.
Turn up the sound.
You might have heard recently that there was a motion to the Israeli Supreme Court against the Israeli government to try and force them to allow aid into Gaza. And the Israeli Supreme Court ruled against this, saying that, no, the government doesn't have to let aid into Gaza, let them die. And part of the justification for this, which they use, is that they cited the Bible. They cited the Bible and the fact that gives Jews permission to starve and kill Amalek. It's a decision that you would think would come out of an ISIS religious court, but in this case, it did not. As you can see here, Judge David Mintz of the Israeli Supreme Court said that the biblical commandment to annihilate Amalek are grounds for rejecting international humanitarian law, distinction between civilians and military objectives in the legal system of the state of Israel. This man cited a biblical commandment telling Jews to entirely wipe out the Amalekian people, which they call Palestinians, which is what they call Palestinians in Israel, to justify Israel starving Palestinians legally. The legal system in Israel is ISIS. This is literally what the ISIS legal system would be like them going to the Quran and being you see in this part, Muhammad led a war, therefore we can kill anyone we want. Done. Israel is ISIS. Worse than ISIS, in fact, because it has achieved power and support and committed crimes on such a scale that just immensely outpace anything that ISIS was ever able to do. Israel is basically the wet dream of ISIS. Fucking Supreme Court citing the Bible. They say this country is it's secular. Ethan Klein's everyone here has equal rights. There's no segregation. There's no apartheid. And literally, the Supreme Court is citing one religious group's interpretation of a religious book to justify starving the other group of people. Israel, according to this guy, has free modalities for religiously mandated war. That is to inherit the promised land, to destroy the people of Amalek, and to fend off aggressors. So I guess it's established now in Israeli law that you can go to war to destroy Amalek. So just say that anyone you want is Amalek and you can do it. Welcome to Jewish ISIS. Israel is Jewish ISIS. Done.
That's wonderful. Send it to me. Send it to me.
It's pretty well documented too. So it's not just a nothing story.
Russ, I need you to send me that link if you would be so kind. Very much. Excellent. Okay. Just excellent. Meanwhile,
I'll give you the share back. You got it? Okay.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, and here we got Bill joining. Excellent, Bill. We're just reviewing a story that the Israeli Supreme Court has affirmed that Israel has a right to commit genocide. Fairly stunning stuff.
Significant historical evaluation.
I think
we're seeing who the real terrorists are. They're not fooling anybody anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think the world would be outraged at this prospect. Absolutely stunning. And then Trump and Netanyahu are plotting Gaza's future without the Palestinians bill. That's the other story we've been looking at. More to come. Here we have Witkoff says Iran must eliminate its nuclear enrichment program, which is for peaceful use of nuclear energy. I mean, this is just insane. Steve Witkoff, President Trump's Middle East envoy, said in a statement Tuesday, Iran must eliminate its nuclear enrichment program, suggesting that Trump admin is hardening its position in negotiations with Tehran. Witkoff made the comments a day after appearing on Fox, suggesting the U.S. wanted Iran to reduce its levels of nuclear enrichment to 3.67%. The enrichment level under the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, known as the JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, from which Trump withdrew in 2018. Iran currently enriches some uranium to 20% and even 60%, still well below the 90% for weapons grade. Witkoff's comments on Fox signaled the U.S. was not demanding the full dismantlement of Iran's civilian nuclear program, which is believed to be a non-starter for Tehran, after strong backlash from Iran hawks. Witkoff appeared to reverse his stance in the statement he released Tuesday. A deal with Iran will only be complete if it is a Trump deal. Any final arrangement must set a framework for peace, stability, and prosperity in the Middle East, mean that Iran must stop and eliminate its nuclear enrichment and weaponization program, which we all know is non-existent. There is no weaponization program. In a statement, I mean, the U.S. has become such liars, such monster liars. The whole world sees us as hypocrites, phonies, and frauds. Unbelievable. Joaquin, your thoughts?
Well, the Iran foreign minister, Araghchi, ended up saying, hey, it's a no-brainer that if the United States insists that Iran get rid of its peaceful energy nuclear program, then we have nothing to talk about. It's going to be over before it even starts.
Yes.
If the U.S. insists all nuclear program, whether it's military or not, has to go in Iran. I mean, they can't be dictating this. It's legal to have what apparently Iran has. You know, so and they're only just trying to get, even if they went military nuclear weapons, they're just trying to get parity so that they can stay alive in a war if it happens with Israel, you know? So, I mean, it's all one-sided. It's all bully and you know, justifying the horror.
Well, Iran actually came back with a quid pro quo offer that if Israel had disbanded their nuclear weapons, and they would completely denuclearize too.
Very good, very good. Bill, do you want to add any thoughts of yours, Bill?
All I can say is, guys, everything I've learned about history and current military affairs, military-industrial complex around the world, U.S., before that, you know, the British colonizing U.S., it's always been misinformation, disinformation. I'm highly skeptical, frankly, about a lot of these reports, but it's too much to dive into that now. Let me just keep my skepticism, you know, and we can dive more into it in the future. So let me just say, most of we are here, in my opinion, about military operations, turns out, like the USS Eisenhower, that was never struck by the Houthis. for example, one of the most recent ones, October 7th, we digested that and broke that down in this on the Raw Deal. So I don't know where the propaganda ends and the truth begins. So I'll just keep my.
Yeah, it's true. Hard to know. You got to cover. You do have to cover it though. You have to kind of examine this stuff and.
Russ, I'm not dismissing examining it, but I think in examining it, just like we do with any domestic false flag, which we'll be talking about later, we have to actually try and find corroborating evidence or not, and then lack of, as Jim knows in his great piece he does on inductive and deductive reasoning, lack of the evidence that should be there if the narrative were true is indicating that it's not, it hasn't happened. So, October 7th is a great example, but I just don't want to tie up what we're doing today with that whole.
But the lack of evidence thing is an interesting concept. Now, Bill's been talking to me about that. We've had some long conversations, and that really ties into a lot of stuff. Lack of evidence, for instance, lack of evidence of anything hitting the Pentagon, lack of evidence of really any, all just on and on. The Sandy Hook, lack of evidence. No. The cameras being turned off at the Nice truck, or the cameras, the video cam at the Nice truck incident never made public appearance. This goes on and on and on and on.
And then we got Tulsi Gabbard, Intel director, and we got the other CIA director, Radcliffe. They're both saying, they don't even have a program. They don't have nuclear development. They even came out and said this.
But then there's another story that came out today that said they have actually built their first nuclear warhead. So we got that story too.
Yeah, but that's got to be
different stories.
Yeah. I don't think there's any doubt about Iran having peaceful nuclear program. I don't think there's any doubt about that whatsoever. There is no doubt about Israel declaring it must, now by Witkoff even, dismantle even its peaceful nuclear energy program. There's no doubt about the Ayatollah having a fatwa forbidding the use of nuclear weapons by Iran, even though I have felt for a long time Iran deserved to have them to create a mutually assured destruction situation in the Middle East. It brought roughly peace about 40 years between the Soviet Union and the United States in the Cold War. So, Joaquin, do you think I have anything wrong in sketching that broad situation?
No, I totally agree. It worked. There was, during the Cold War, we were always trained, get under the desk, all this crap, but it never happened. And I think that's the biggest deterrent to any kind of possibility of nuclear war. But we also have to realize that they have the technology where they have plasma scalar kind of weaponry where they can wipe out a whole population of people and not have the radiation, So there's other weapons that can be brought to bear in all of this that aren't being talked about.
Yes, I think that's very, very important. Meanwhile, we have this ongoing attack on the Houthis by the United States. I mean, it's scurrilous. 15 U.S. airstrikes hit Yemen's Marib province. The strike come amid reports that the U.S. may back a ground offensive, get that, against the Houthis. 15 U.S. airstrikes hit districts in Yemen's Marib province Monday. Yemen's Sab news agency reported as a daily U.S. bombing campaign on the country continues. Marib's in the eastern part of Houthi-controlled Yemen, which is where 80% of Yemenis live. The province was a site of heavy ground fighting between the Houthis and Saudi-backed forces in 2021 during the U.S.-backed Saudi-UAE war on Yemen, which hasn't officially ended, but has been frozen since a 2022 ceasefire. The 2022 ceasefire ended Saudi airstrikes on Yemen, but there have been occasional flare-ups on the ground, including in Marib and Saudi shelling across the Saudi-Yemen border. But get this, which I find just incredible. U.S. considering backing a ground offensive against the Houthis in Yemen. U.S. is considering backing a ground offensive at the Houthis in Yemen, the Wall Street Journal reported Monday. The report said plans to back anti-Houthi militias on the ground have been brought to the U.S. by the UAE, and that the U.S. is open to the idea, but hasn't made a final decision yet. The Houthis, officially known as Ansar Allah, have controlled Yemen's capital, Sana'a, since 2014, currently govern an area where 80% of Yemenis live. The U.S. supported a Saudi UAE-led coalition against the Houthis from 2015 to 2022 in a brutal war that killed hundreds of thousands of Yemenis, but failed to return former Yemeni President Abdul Rabu Mansour Hadi to power. In 2022, after reaching a ceasefire with the Houthis, the Saudis pushed Haddad aside and replaced him with a presidential leadership council that includes several different factions. The PLC's leadership is based in Saudi Arabia, but is considered Yemen's internationally recognized government, Fat Pants. Well, there's a final paragraph here I want to toss into the hopper. A senior member of Ansar Allah Political Bureau has said the Houthis would stop attacking U.S. warships if the U.S. stopped bombing Yemen. Trump admin officials have claimed they would stop the airstrikes if the Houthis declared they would stop targeting U.S. ships. But there's no sign the U.S. is considering the offer, since a bombing campaign is really about protecting Israel. Indeed it is. So Trump appears to me to be going all out, doing everything he can for the benefit of Israel, no matter at what cost to America, our military, our resources, our treasury. Joaquin, I'm sick of this guy. He's a damn Bibi Netanyahu stooge. It's disgusting.
Owned and controlled by Israel and the City of London founders of Israel. Yeah, I mean, it's really sad and tragic that the United States, you know, the country we love, we went into the military, we were willing to even die for our country. We are the bad guys. We are the villains. We are the terrorists. Now, it's an upside down world, and unfortunately, the dark side's in control of the United States and Israel and the West. It seems, all the Houthis want were the slaughter of their fellow Islam people in Palestine to be able to live. That's all they wanted. And so they're trying to do a little bit on their part, on their behalf, by trying to fish out any supply ships, delivering goods and weapons to Israel, so the massacre can stop. And, they keep saying, yeah, all they have to do is stop killing the Palestinians and no more problem from us, but no, they're the bad guys, says America and Israel. And they are the terrorists. They are the terrorists and the ones that will go down in history as the evil ones that are starting all these wars and aggression. It's just appalling and so sick.
Because of Houthis, Yemen is the only state that's declared war against Israel. Everything they're doing is in accordance with international law. Even the United Nations has confirmed it. The U.S., however, and the U.K. attacking Yemen are violating international law and the UN Charter. There's no question about it. This is getting simply beyond grotesque. Russ, your thoughts?
Well, when you kind of talk about this, I'm kind of thinking about what the order of battle would be in Yemen. And because I was talking about sending troops in there, based on what you were just saying, now it can't be the IDF, because the IDF can't fight. We've already determined that. They're not capable of that kind of a campaign. The U.S., maybe they could do it. Send a bunch of Marines in there. Mercenaries, and I'm kind of at a loss of exactly how they could take on the Houthis. They're pretty tough, well-equipped fighters and pretty well trained.
Yeah.
And it's on their own home soil to boot. It's their own terrain that they know inside and out. So then you're going to get into another one of these kind of non-starter type wars that doesn't get off the ground. So what it equates to me, ultimately, when I think it all through, is more extermination and genocide of civilians. It's about all I can come up with.
And we got a real good track record for war victories in the last years. All we've been doing is losing our wars, and we're going to get bogged down in another one now?
Yeah, this is, they're apparently going to recruit these mercenary factions and even ISIS. They're going to use ISIS against the Houthis. Right. I mean, this is just...
Yeah, they'll try that.
This is just...
That seems like that they're going to try.
This is just despicable. And this is the United States. We created ISIS, for crying out loud, back in 2012. Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, and Barack Obama. And when Mike Flynn opposed it, Brennan suggested to Obama he ought to sack him, and he did. He fired Mike Flynn for opposing the creation of a terrorist army in Syria. God damn, what has become of the...
The only way I could think that this mercenary thing would work is if they got the Houthis infiltrated. And, as we discussed, like in Syria, they may have a bunch of people, the Israelis in particular, because that's asymmetric warfare that they fight, is get sort of their operatives inside of the Houthi command structure and then collapse it from within. That's possible.
Yeah, but I think it's improbable. I mean, the Houthis have been at war for so long. They've proven them to be so robust, so courageous, so honorable. In my opinion, they are the most honorable fighting force in the world today.
Yeah, they have a good track record, so you're probably right. But that's the element out there that they may just collapse them from within or try to.
Yeah. Well, here we have Joaquin with a new piece here. Zionist Trump. Yeah, ever. U.S. and World War destroyer by tariffs, bombs, and collapsing Western economies. Joaquin, I think you've hit another one out of the park, by the way, here. I hit the wrong button here. Notable Canadian scholar, geopolitical analyst, and author Henry Mankow's 2008 book, Illuminati, the Cult That Hijacked the World, summarizes what humanity has been facing is now reaching the boiling point. Bizarre and incredible as it sounds, humanity has been colonized by a satanic cult called the Illuminati. This cult represents Masonic and Jewish bankers who finagled a monopoly over government credit, which allows them to charge interest on funds they create out of nothing. Naturally, they want to protect this prize by translating it into a political and cultural monopoly. This takes the form of a totalitarian world government dedicated to Lucifer, who represents the defiance of God. Thus, the people who control our purse strings are conspiring against us. To distract and control us, they have used a vast occult network of Freemasonry to infiltrate most organizations, especially government intel agencies, education, and the mass media. Humanity is being re-engineered to serve the Illuminati. They undermine institutions like marriage and religion and promote depravity, dysfunction, corruption, and division. They have orchestrated 2 world wars and are planning a 3rd. Now Joaquin continues. America, the once beacon of liberty and freedom, champion of the world, today finds itself on life support, is all but dead. The truth is, it's been dying for over a century and a half. On February 21, 1871, the 41st U.S. Congress passed Act to provide a government for the District of Columbia, known as the Act of 1871, effectively hijacking our constitutional republic and covertly turning the United States of America Incorporated into a District of Columbia corporation ruled by external forces outside the U.S. under maritime law's central banking Khazarian mafia. During the U.S. Civil War, both sides had racked up enormous unpaid debts to the City of London banksters, and the creditors, through devious means, incorporated America. Under the predatory rule of robber barons and international bankers amidst industrial revolution modernization, the opportune pathway to monopolize control was seized. Essentially, the treasonous 1871 act by Congress usurped all jurisdictional power and authority away from individual states' rights our founding fathers painstakingly established in order to dismantle America's constitutional checks and balance systems, superseded by unlimited corporatized federal government authority taken over by private elite interests. Thus, the 10 square mile land occupied by the U.S. federal government still remains a separate sovereign entity, distinct apart from the rest of the then captured United States, fully under the Rothschild City of London tentacle control. Joaquin, this is so serious. It's so substantial. Your further thoughts you'd like to add with that? This is available on my blog at jameshfetzer.org and also at thegovernmentrag.com. Joaquin.
Well, I go on to say that less than 6 months after they passed the Act of 1871, the top Freemasons in the world, Albert Pike, the ex-Confederate general in the United States, and Giuseppe Mazzini, the top Freemason in Italy, received a letter from Pike saying that, he outlined the First World War, the Second World War very accurately, now that they've already happened, and he outlined World War III to be the Zionist war versus the Islam war. And that happened, they happened within 6 months of each other to basically turn America into a corporation rather than retain it as a constitutional republic. And then a few months later, the whole plotting of World War III that we're up against right now. We need to take a look at history and see how things have actually evolved to where we're at right now. And it's been around for a long time. So they're going for the gusto of the Third World War, Armageddon. And, Trump's a stooge to go along with the evil, ones on top, which I always say, City of London.
I've been so supportive of Trump for so long. I voted for him not once, not twice, 3 times. But I got to say, in my opinion, he's a traitor. He's turning the United States over to Israel. He's nothing but a Netanyahu stooge. He appears to be a Shabbat Lubavitcher. I'm really repulsed by the guy at this point in time. Russ, your thoughts?
Well, go ahead. Let Bill get a word in. He hasn't had too much to say on this. Bill?
You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, I'm muted. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'll touch on what you just talked about. I had some input on the last topic, but so Joaquin, you are probably familiar with Lorraine Moret and her study on ancient Iranian bloodlines, what are called the Zoroastrian bloodlines, how they work together with the Catholic Church. They've been working together forever. So I sent you all a expose article just now on this. I'd heard about it in the past, and I think it's relevant. It ties into the Illuminati, obviously everything that Bill Cooper talked about and Eustace Mullins. Absolutely. So just jump real back quick to Hootie's. I'm sorry.
Please do. Yes.
Okay. Regarding the Hootie funding, I haven't followed that up. I've been busy diving in deeper into other things like Sandy Hook and my own trying to relocate to a disability housing unit. So the point is, I can talk a little bit of Hamas. We know, for example, that funding for Hamas obviously also came through the Swiss banks. That there's a history of that, along with, of course, Netanyahu, the U.S. government. The transnational bankers fund both sides of every war. I think we can look back and see that. It's all about land grab, resource grab, Smedley Butler wars and racket. Now, Ehud Barak, listen to this, 11/21/23, right after, the alleged October 7th incident, October-November, he stated publicly, Ehud Barak, who I believe was a former prime minister of Israel, said that Israel built the tunnels under Al-Shifa Hospital. So that article's in the public domain. I can send it to you guys. And yeah. When I was looking at this, I'll finish by this. You guys know I'm certified to operate 4 pieces of heavy equipment. I've worked on military bases, Fort Ord, Camp Pendleton, with Shaw Environmental. I'm looking at these tunnels, and there's imagery of the tunnels, some as large as Subway, some not. You got to move a whole lot of earth. You need equipment. Where is it being deposited? The rock, the dirt. There's no way that happened without Israel being fully aware and being in cahoots with it, because it's highly surveilled. Do you see what I mean? And where do they get the equipment from to do the excavating? And so obviously this has all been brought about in collaboration. And so now I haven't then looked into the Houthi and that funding and what's behind that, but I'd not be surprised to learn that the Zoroastrian bloodlines and the Catholic Church is directly involved, as always, so it seems. But Russ is a really good historian, Jim, on this. This is new territory for me.
Well, I think it's very clear that certain leadership in Hamas is Israeli. I think it's obvious. Now, I'm not saying all of Hamas. Probably the rank and file is probably legitimate warriors for their cause, but the leadership, and I kind of think that the death of the what's his name? I did the whole. Jesus, I'm just getting terrible with names. I did the whole presentation on this. The guy that
where they got him sitting in the chair.
Yeah, that guy is an Israeli agent. I mean, they got him in prison for 22 years. They did brain surgery on him, and probably his cadre around him. It's very interesting that the people that led Hamas were largely in Israeli prisons. Well, what does that tell you? MK Ultra, mind control, the whole 9 yards. And that's how the Israelis operate. So I definitely believe that theory. And of course, the whole opening the gates of October 7th, letting them stream in, I think is pretty well established. Yeah. Even the Israeli media is recognizing that.
Sure.
Well, Netanyahu actually was a fundamental figure that actually started Hamas.
Right.
He wanted to split the Palestinians,
right,
the West Bank from the Palestinians in Gaza, and so it's an inside job, just like 9/11 was an inside Israeli, U.S. job. It's very similar.
Well, let's get clear. I think it is the case. Israel initially funded Hamas to create an alternative to the PLO because Yasser Arafat was just too popular, too influential. They wanted to cut him down. They eventually poisoned him. I dare say, however, Hamas has grown and developed and has become a bona fide representative of the Palestinian people. They have slaughtered the IDF. The IDF cannot beat the Hamas. They basically lost Hamas just as they've lost to Hezbollah in Lebanon. So
that's the rank and file. The guy, the rank and file is not Israeli controlled. I'm separating the leadership from the rank and file. And
yeah,
so
but
I think maybe the Israelis miscalculated that they could just go into Gaza and handle this Hamas rank and file, and they miscalculated. So that's my theory on that.
Yeah. Well, see, I think Bill is going so far as to suggest it's all a sham, that all that rubble in Gaza maybe isn't even real. Bill, I'm just wondering how far you're going with this, because you seem to be suggesting this is all just political theater. And I think it's our job to separate what is and what isn't theater from what is real. And the mass slaughter of Palestinians is real. Your thoughts?
Well, like if we were in court, we'll talk about this when we talk about Sandy Hook. There's certain legal maxims I like to apply looking at geopolitics. Falsus uno, falsus omnibus. Once you start defrauding the court, you lose credibility. And if we look at October 7th, this whole operation and even the tunnels being built, obviously there was collaboration. And I would go so far, we did talk about October 7th. As a heavy equipment operator,
we all agree, Bill.
Yeah.
We all agree. We all agree October 7th was at the minimum allowed to happen, that it was false, and that they used their own Apache, American supplied Apache, to kill more Israelis to justify the mass slaughter of the Palestinians in Gaza. We all agree to that. It's not even debatable.
Right. Well, you asked me.
Go ahead.
I was trying to put things into context for any new listener. That's where I start my premise. When I'm looking at an action and I see a grand defrauding going on, and to the extent of which even Olay Demigod, in his reporting on that, cited that all those cars destroyed at the alleged bizarre, event were destroyed by direct energy weapons, according to him and his analysis of the forensic evidence. So I like Olay, and
you're talking about.
Believe he has.
You mean on October 7th that direct energy weapons were used on October 7th?
Yes. So now let's talk about one thing that I've been talking to Russ about recently, which I did bring to your attention, Jim. And one of the reasons I talk fast is I want to get it all in. So I'll slow down because Jim let me know that when I talk fast, it's confusing and overwhelming. So if you look at what we were told by CNN, for example, when we're talking about bombing in Gaza, right? I'm not saying there's no bombing. What I'm saying is the narratives we're being told cannot possibly be true. Here's why. A 2,000-pound bomb, okay, CNN reported by their analysis, aerial analysis, 500 2,000-pound bombs, okay? Now, Russ sent me a video, and I've looked into it further. The size of the crater, the size of the blast wave, the size of the destructive force is enormous, for one. It's like 800 meters in radius for destruction, a quarter mile or half of that roughly for total death, supposedly, and a lot of injured. Okay, so keep that thought for a second. Now, just follow me. If we had Gaza is only 141 square miles, or 147. Okay, well, 500 bombs at a half a mile destruction radius, each bomb would be 250 miles of total destruction. That's more than 100 miles more square miles of what Gaza is. Now, let's talk about tonnage. We've heard recent reports, 70,000 tons of bomb dropped on Gaza, right? And then even more recently, 85,000 tons of bomb. Well, when you take 2,000 pounds times 500, that's 1 million pounds. Guess how many tons that is? 500. So hold that thought. We just diagnosed that 500. Now, you guys could break this down and tear it up. It's just, I'm examining it and looking at this. 500 2,000-pound bombs would be 250 square miles of destruction and 125 square miles of death, according to the reports on an MK-84. Okay? Well, if you have 500 tons that can cause that number of deaths, let's do the math. How many times does 500 go into 85,000? Do you see what I'm saying? Or better yet, it is so implausible that level of tonnage could have been dropped on that little strip. Do you see what I'm saying? That's my end game, looking at this. Because a fraction of that, just what CNN reports in MK-84s, would level that place one time plus 100 square miles over. Based on the reports, Russ sent me that video, so I'm basing it on what he sent me, and I collaborated with other reports. So if you go 500 into 85,000, for example, you get 17,000. How many times can we level that place? You see what I mean? It's impossible. It's totally impossible, Jim, your artillery commanding officer, to drop that amount of tonnage. You would have crater upon crater upon crater. How deep would they be? You see what I mean? you see what I'm getting at?
You know, let's take a look. If you want to give me the screen, let's take a look at these 2,000-pound bombs just to kind of get a visual on it.
Okay, let me.
You want to do that? I mean, I
yeah,
don't want to
sure.
take over your show, but
No. This is.
Can I add a couple more quick things?
Yeah,
while you're
go ahead.
pulling that up, guy?
Go ahead.
Okay, I was an X before I got booted permanently, and I can still go to YouTube, or I should say reports. I use Yandex as a browser. You know when Jim broke down the Boston unbombing? It's like, where's the blood, right? I'm not saying everything happened in Gaza is fake, but I have to say I've seen many reports, many videos I've looked at with a lady called Blarney Stone that actually came in and talked to Jim about this. We were looking at them together. She's been a fan of Jim for a decade. I learned about her in X. And she's like, oh, my God, Bill, you're right about that. There is no blood. Where's the collateral damage? How could that be? How is it there's supposedly, in one report, 61 casualties, supposedly 11 dead, 51 injured? Guess what? In the video, there's only 11 people total. And most of them are moving, and there's zero collateral damage. Nothing to any building. There's no crater. There's nothing.
Your host.
So what I'm saying is,
your host, Russ.
I know you want to move on.
No, I want you to keep going. But Russ, your host, go ahead.
Okay, here's the 2,000-pound bomb. Let's just take a look at it. You got the screen up?
No, just a notice. There you go. There you go.
All right, start that over.
Because you have much more capable weapons in our inventory.
Yeah, it's a pretty good blast.
No, do you recall the video you sent me prior when we were talking about this when I was in the show before?
Yeah, the crater's kind of misleading, though, because sometimes the craters aren't that big, but that blast there we just saw.
What I'm just going on the statistics that I then followed up on. We're looking at a 50-meter fireball, right, according to the video you sent and then other reports I followed up. Not all the reports are consistent either. That's a very confusing thing, I will say. But the majority of them seem to collaborate, the original video you sent me, Russ, and we're looking at a 11-meter crater. Now, when I'm digging as an excavator operator, depending on the soil strata and structure, if it's mostly sand with small rock structure, it's really easy to dig through. What I'm getting at is you take a rocky soil, with, like in Santa Barbara, a lot of large boulders in Montecito, where I worked, that's another matter.
Bill, is it possible? Will you work back?
When you're dropping a bomb, go ahead.
Work backwards.
When you're dropping a bomb,
work backwards from the damage and infer how much was actually dropped. Because unless you're suggesting I'm
trying to make an equivalency. You interrupt me. When you're digging, the hardness of the soil is relevant. When you're dropping a bomb, it's the same thing.
Bill.
It's desert. That's mostly sand.
Bill, you may be wrong on the estimate of how much has been dropped. That's all. Christ almighty. Hang on a second. Bill has raised an important question here. Given the amount of devastation created by these bombs, and the amount of tonnage that's claimed to have been dropped on Gaza, had been dropped on Gaza, there ought to be massively more damage. The alternative is, since there's less, say again?
Your volume is low, you're not coming in.
Really? Huh. That's kind of odd. I'm rather surprised by that.
There you go. Okay.
Now you mean now it's back? Okay. Let me point out, Bill has made a very important point about the amount of damage inflicted by certain tonnage of bombing. And he's saying, when you look at the damage to Gaza, considering the amount of tonnage alleged to have dropped, it isn't sufficient. There should be vastly more. The alternative would be, but when you look at the damage to Gaza, you can make an inference backwards that it's simply been a lesser amount of tonnage that's been dropped on Gaza. Now, right. Joaquin, I want you to pick up and give us what you make out of all this.
Well, there might be a valid point that Bill's making here, but the bottom line is there's not much left of Gaza. The buildings are gone. It's like 90% of all the buildings have already been bombed and toppled over. And there's thousands of bodies that are still rotting away in the rubble that have not gone into the official count that they have. And it's something like 55,000 or something like that. It's way more than that. So, that's my take on it. Yeah, it's a point, and to a great extent, it's a show that they bring on, and a lot of false things are brought to bear to make people think a certain way. But the bottom line is genocide is going on, and the world isn't doing anything to help except the Houthis.
Bill, go ahead. Give us your further thoughts.
Okay, I want to tie this into the population. Now, who's reporting on the tonnage? If anyone were to Google tons of bombs dropped on Gaza, you're going to see a lot of Middle East Monitor, 85,000 tons. You go back to Wikipedia, last report, I guess, is 70,000 tons. It's anywhere between 70 and 85,000 tons I'm seeing repeatedly. All I was trying to say was 2,000 pounds times 500 is 1 million pounds, 500 tons. 500 goes into 85,000 for simple math, 17,000. You see, you would level that. Now, let's talk about population then. You can say, well, look at all the destruction. Okay, I'm not arguing that it exists. Okay, so one, we've dissected, they're not dropping the amount of tonnage they are, and or the other scenario is it's where they're misleading us. Either way, however you want to pull it apart, it can't all be true. Now, if you look at 2.3 million people that existed there in 147 square miles, if you drop that amount of tonnage 85,000 times, we could blow the place up over 20,000 times over. I suggest the collateral damage to human life would be far exceeding what they're telling us.
It might be. It might be, Bill. It might be.
Exactly. You see, all I'm saying is, if you look at this like you would look at a court case, and you look at it like you and I talked about the maxims, and you have to start seeing there's repeatedly there's disinformation. What's really happening is we have trouble. You see what I mean? Because of this repeated.
Well, they could very well be underreporting the deaths and.
I think they're overwhelmingly underreporting the deaths. I don't have any doubt about that. But I think
I would point out in this little exercise we're doing is the Israelis are trigger happy and they waste a lot of ordnance. They've shown that constantly throughout this whole operation.
Yes.
So they could drop a 2,000-pound bomb in one spot, blast the shit out of it, and just come back again and waste another 2,000 bomb on the same spot. Just constantly. Pounding the same spot. So it's the efficiency of the bombing of these 2,000 pounds. Yeah.
Bill's raised a very interesting point. Namely, there's a tension, a contradiction between the reported damage and the reported tonnage, and we grant that. I think no one's going to argue with you, Bill, and I think it is important observation. So one or the other is mistaken, or possibly both, but they cannot both be true. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I want to say, Jim, I read your article on deductive inductive reasoning, and this is what I'm applying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the
good.
The next level is, and I do it objectively. I'm not a Zionist. I've been accused of that. No. I have a dog in either side. We know who funded Hamas.
The thing is, Bill, we have a dog on one side, so okay, make that clear.
No, I understand. Russ, I get it. Let's just talk about the collateral damage of death real quick, okay? Now, if you, like we established, whatever fraction of 85,000 tons it may be, who knows, okay? And if you had, all right, let's look at Bergen-Belsen, for example, where the bodies were dead and rotting. You had cholera, not only the typhus, you had cholera, dysentery, starvation, dehydration, etc. Compiling the deaths. We know there were no gas chambers, okay? Boom. But look now. You've got Bergen-Belsen was 50,000 people. See the equivalencies I'm trying to make? If you draw that to Gaza, and if you had that number of bodies under rubble, anyone ever hear about vector disease spreading through flies, mice? In other words, that would be a cesspool of disease. And now the UN originally said, going back to not this May. Yeah, they said as of May from the initial attack, which of course we know, say October 7th, all this damage, that by May there'd be 1.1 million people dead. Then they changed it by July, there'd be 1.1 million people. If we had that many people dead, where are they being buried? Where's the forensic evidence? Just like I look at this the way I broke down the Holocaust. You see what I'm saying?
Well, you got to point out that they've taken the population of Gaza and concentrated them in, along the beaches there, certain areas. They kind of clear. The places that have really been devastated, they don't even let people go back in there. They do to shoot them. So that's
good point. Good point, Russ. So what we have is they're notified ahead of time. They talk about leaflets being dropped. I was talking to a guy, I can't divulge his name. He asked me not to, who said he had inside information when I was an ex. I said, what's happening? He said, just like when the Luftwaffe attacked England, tunnels, underground. People are going underground. They're notified ahead of time they're going underground. 2, they're moving out of the blast area, right? Otherwise, the amount of collateral deaths in that tiny area with 2.3 million people would just be unspeakable, and you'd see a lot more of it. I'm not seeing we don't even see the forensic evidence of where do you bury all those people if they're under rubble. Then how is it there's reporters there, Russ, who are reporting and they're not being swarmed by flies? I used to have horses and goats, so you got to do fly control big time and clean up the poop. If you have a lot of bodies, Jim knows, and people who've been in war know, the rats fill the trenches. They've got all kinds of disease spreading in war zone military personnel. So anyway, I'm just trying to understand it. It started with a huge fraud. I don't know where. How do I
know where the fraud ends, right?
At this point, it's very difficult to disseminate.
Okay. That's good. That's interesting, and that's a good exercise.
Joaquin,
I think we should.
Yeah. Joaquin, you want to add any further thoughts?
No, not to this.
Okay. Listen, something else Bill wanted to discuss for you, but I'm proposing, Bill, you come on the show Friday and we talk about FOIA, and I'm going to see if Wolfgang can join us. But there's something else I want to raise. I've had a email from a correspondent. This is a pretty smart guy, asking about why we're even bothering addressing Victor Hugo's absurdities. His title is, Why Do We Bother with VH? And here's what he says. My point is that nobody but you apparently cares about Victor's videos and his allegations. If they are preposterous or nonsensical, then that's all the more reason to ignore them. Focusing on them tends to give them weight. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't even know if he has a point when he claims you should have removed the case to a federal court. But again, whether you made a legal error or not, nobody cares. Because any fool can see that the courts are controlled and the entire case is ridiculous. That's the point, isn't it? Now, it is true that Alex took a dive, no question about that. He just went along with a charade because that was the best thing for him. And he still bends the truth from time to time. But he's still in business, and no judgment was ever collected. But that's not you. I can't believe you spent time on this when there are plenty of other things vastly more important than Victor Hugo to discuss. Now, Russ wrote a very...
let me just say something. What does he mean by we know? We know that the courts are corrupt. Okay, yeah, we do.
Yeah, I think he's claiming it. He's claiming...
No, but there's other people. There's other people in the universe, dude. There's other people.
He's claiming it's common.
The next step in this whole process is to actually prove.
Yeah.
And I think Bill's prepared to do it. Bill's prepared to do it in some of these discussions, just how fraudulent the courts are. That's going to be our main.
Russ, you wrote a wonderful response. Do you have that at hand? Could you share that with us? I'd like for you to share us your response, which I I know. I thought that was spot on. If you could pull it up, I'd be great.
It kind of gives away our strategy a little bit to Victor, so I kind of
All right.
not to say.
All right.
But I kind of made a point. What's this guy saying about we? You know, yeah, we know, but no, not everybody knows. So it's kind of a red herring. Is what I'm saying.
Well, I think there are multiple reasons why we need to move forward, including insisting that these platforms adhere to their terms of service. I mean,
that's the main one.
To allow this to go on is just to turn the BitChute and Rumble into cesspools of false allegations, historical claims. I mean, this is as exaggerated, as grotesque a case as they may ever have in the history of the internet. This guy with already over 444 videos attacking us because of a difference of opinion about, how to characterize the Jewish problem. I mean, it's lunatic. And I don't think there's any doubt that he suffers from various abnormalities of character and personality. It goes back to 2008. We got reports from Miami about him hanging out a painting of a 4-foot-long penis. I mean, give us a break. So they were saying already in Miami in 2008, he's one of the strangest residents of the community.
You can't just ignore this guy. So I totally disagree with the writer.
Yeah, I think we cannot. Joaquin, would you like to add further thoughts?
Well, I see both points of view. I personally have not wanted to get that involved because, I'm busy writing all the time and I don't have time to spend so much time with Victor. And I see his point, this guy's point of view that he wrote in that, and I made the point later that they want to divide and rule. That's how they create the conflicts where it's one group against another. And within the alt news world, I find that they are very effective about dividing and ruling us so that we're fighting amongst each other rather than paying attention to the bigger issues like human genocide that they're out to get us, because that is very real, and that's the story of all ages. So I tend to focus a lot on that, and I'm busy writing, so I don't get into it. But as far as he's gone way past the limit of defamation, I mean, he meets every legal criteria. And so, yeah, for him to go after you and try and wreck your reputation, and obviously he went after Russ with a whole bit with that. And so, yeah, I get it. He went after me in a much milder way. So, it's easy for me to say. But, yeah, you guys definitely, it needs to be followed up with BitChute and Rumble and all the rest of them so that they adhere to their own rule.
Yeah. Part of his strategy is to claim he's just reporting what other people are doing and that it's news and therefore he's protected. So he'll say, well, Arwin Young, this attorney from Ohio, has proof that I threw my case at Sandy Hook, which is absurd because I'm still in court fighting it. How can I have thrown a case that I'm still fighting? Bill happened to notice all this and sent Wynn multiple examples of briefs that show I'm still in court, some of which he assisted me in writing. So, I mean, how can this guy persist in making this?
It's interesting that correspondence has come in from Todd Callender, who's kind of reaching out now and wants to have conversations about this. But Todd Callender knows that the courts are corrupt. These guys don't believe that they're functioning.
Yeah,
right? Am I wrong?
Well, Bill was very good because Todd was responding to Bill's contribution to our conversation.
What Bill brings to the conversation is a understanding of the absolute corruption of the court system.
Yeah, and he's fought many battles and learned an awful lot. I mean, I've been astonished by his legal history.
But
Bill,
naive to think that the courts aren't corrupt and didn't just totally.
That's something Wynn never factors in.
Is the word to use. But give it to Bill. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, we want your input here. Go ahead, tell us. You got to unmute, Bill. You're muted.
There's a lot to unpack there. So the two issues we see is liability, damage, defamation, what possible actions can be taken regarding Victor. We talked about that in our April 9th show. Let me just say that's one thing that we can discuss further. And then there's my communication with Todd and I think it may be helpful in it to me communicating to him and him communicating back. If you like, Jim, I could quickly read those or not. You tell me, because it kind of lays out both our perspectives. And let's just say it was healthy, it was productive. He thanked me, and he's looking forward to us coming on his show, Todd is, because he fully admits he doesn't know much about Sandy Hook, really. And he said, look, I only had, went on once. And he said, I like to learn what you all have learned. However, he's very clear. He said, if you can get them to put the pistols away, and what he exactly means by that, he said his email's being flooded, and I don't know, probably from Victor as well, and Wynn, who knows, and we can only speculate. I only sent him this one email, because I never had his email address till he emailed me. So where that's coming from, I don't know. But the point is that he would like to be constructive. Jim, I'll ask you, do you want me to quickly read any of this or just give you a synopsis?
Sure. Well, the synopsis is excellent, but Todd's letter, I think, was very open-minded. He appears to me to be very patient. I think he's a responsible guy, unlike Wynn and Victor Hugo, who are egregious in their abuse of the platform and their willingness to indulge in unqualified defamation. I mean, it's just stunning how far they have gone.
Using Todd as their
Todd as their alleged.
I read his email to us, and he's just basically saying, "I want to learn. I want to get in and find out about this. This is a big issue." That's all he said.
Yeah, well, he's glad to have us on.
Go ahead.
Bill, go ahead. Say whatever you'd like.
Okay. So I'm believing that he needs to learn more. Now, here's the thing. You have two attorneys, and he platformed, when I say you have Todd and you have Wynn. Now, Wynn has made his assertions on Tom's show. Wynn has a site, anyone can go look at, where he spends half of it thrashing Jim and Wolfgang. All right. So that is Operation Madcap, R. Wynn Young. You can Google it and find it. And you scroll down a bit, and you'll see he's got video content with Todd, and then he uses that to validate himself. You see what I mean? Look, I got a 30-year attorney, and he repeats this. In other words, Todd is backing up his story. And then he goes on to totally smear Jim and Wolf as the gurus who were basically controlled out. Okay? So, yet, his very premise is this. One, okay, let's go back a step to the first point. His premise is that because Jim didn't have rider's insurance and he would represent himself, he threw the case. He's making a conclusion based on a cursory observation. It's got no basis in fact that what happened, as Jim can tell you, Moonrock Books and what is it, Jim? What's it called again? Their legal arm with I forgot.
Wrongs Without Remedies?
Yes. Wrongs Without Remedies had two attorneys. Jim was adjoined to, obviously, they're all named as defendants. They're the publishers. They should have defended and fought this. And they didn't. They caved and left Jim and who's the other fellow?
Mike Palachuk, co-editor.
Right. So Jim was relying on the legal representation of his publisher. The fact that they caved is out of Jim's hands. Now he's stuck without an attorney, and I can tell you,
the point is that Todd doesn't understand that, and probably we should. I don't want to direct you guys, but we're going to confuse the audience if we're not careful. But Todd is willing to come to the table and learn all this stuff.
Yeah.
And learn all the stuff. Right. We've already covered. We've covered. If the audience wants, we can go back to the last Wednesday show we did and get all this information.
Bill, don't you agree the whole insurance thing is a red herring because the insurance would just pay off a settlement for an offense I didn't commit. So, I mean, he's ignoring the fact that the court was complicit in this. It was a rigged trial. I mean, I'm alleging that in my briefs, and I stand by every word of my briefs.
I concur. And we can look at the Remington Arms Sandy Hook thing where they caved.
Right.
So this is, when you go against the government powers, the corporations are owned by it's fascism, and you get to the courts, and this is what we see repeatedly. So first of all, with the Bunts, there's no merit to any lawsuit against you or even Alex for that matter, because here's for the audience, this is a dead ringer. And I was trying to explain this to Russ. Okay, plain devil's advocate, all these kids died, and adults. Right. I disagree, but say, we know to this day, Jim, you know, anyone can get on their cell phone or laptop and find the FBI Crime Table 8, 2012, Consolidated Crime Table, find the state of Connecticut, scroll down to Newtown where Sandy Hook's a village, and what does it say? 0. Now, I'm a citizen reporter, and I've been reporting on this, and I used to go to Camp Whipplewaug in Newtown. I live here, like not in Sandy Hook, but in Fairfield County now. I used to live in Trumbull. Now I live right outside Trumbull. Okay, so what I'm trying to make is, I've been reporting on this. All Alex Jones had to do, or anybody, even if the court were legit, would say, you know, what does it say in that crime table? It says,
wow, what happened?
Recording in progress.
Keep going, Bill.
Okay, so what you have is, you have this propaganda that is so overwhelming, a mass formation psychosis that this happened. The point is, the courts are completely corrupt. We've all seen it. And a perfect example is the case has no merit, because if you look at a chain of liability, who's liable for putting that table out to this day that says 0?
FBI.
Exactly. Has anyone sued the FBI for that? Are they number one as a defendant? No. Okay. No.
Because they're establishing the standard. They're just establishing the narrative, and people are just reacting to that narrative, and they're saying zeros. But then it gets worse than that, because there's so much omission of evidence. And that's what the FOIA hearings with Wolfgang Haubig showed. I mean, I don't want to steal a thunder, because I've just kind of learned all this myself.
Yeah.
But this is what Calendar needs to hear.
Yeah.
Is the tremendous amount of omission, and the FOIA tapes that are there's supposed to be like 32 of them, and only 3 were put out. Things like that. I mean, I don't even know where to start on that. We were just going. I mean, just omission. So the legal standard, which Bill can explain, is that if you're omitting evidence, that's an admission of guilt.
Stand by. We got a break, and we'll continue here. And then momentarily, I'll give out the number for callers to join us. Stand by. We'll be right back.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Hello, Jim.
Let's see. Bill, did you want to add another comment or two? We do.
Before you bring in callers,
let's
give the people a little teaser for the future shows. Russ touched on it. Well, let me first finish my last thought. If I ever got sued, all I'd say is, cite the FBI crime table. I believe it's true. That's it. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get this case dropped. It's vexatious. It's frivolous. I'm a reporter. I'm just reporting to them. Right? And then sue whoever's bringing the suit sue them for damage and defamation. That's what should have happened. But Alex Jones, it turns out, and the courts here were so upside down corrupt, you couldn't get anywhere. You take that where you want. But for next show, we have, just touch on the FOIA Commission hearings, July 9th. Now, you're going to have a hell of a time finding that. If you use the index, you might find it.
Bill, you need to preface. Wolfgang Halbig was trying to expose that this whole thing was a sham. And in his efforts, he submitted Freedom of Information Act requests for the release of certain crucial records, including the police dash cam footage. Now, we have some police dash cam footage for locations and times when, according to the official narrative, an evacuation was taking place. But the dash cam footage shows nothing going on there. In other words, it contradicts the official narrative. Now, Newtown was blocking and not being cooperative, or the state police or whatever. So this is Wolfgang trying to pursue the enforcement of his Freedom of Information Act requests with an attorney, Kay Griggs. Go right ahead now.
But also add that somebody in, I don't know where, one of these police departments leaked into the public domain the videos. But they're not time-stamped or something. Something wrong.
Let me clarify what happened there.
Okay.
Kate Wilson was Wolf's attorney.
Kate Wilson, not Griggs.
Leading up to that. Now, what you have in the public domain, which is admissible under the hearsay rule, is because it's in media. You have, and you can find, anyone can find it in Rumble. We need to talk about Sandy Hook. The third presenter, her name is Shelley. She's got the Connecticut State Police video and the report. You can see the cops. They're obviously at Sandy Hook School. They shoot the whole parking lot. That first came out in 2014. That's the earliest rendition I found in the public domain. Now, then you had Wolf's hearings, which took place in 2015. Okay? And you have 3 law enforcement teams there. You have Newtown, so you have videos from their cameras. That's another issue that we'll describe. Defragmented, apparently, because there's no time and date stamp, and yet you've got the state police, but also the FBI was there. So no one's even talking about the FBI dash cam footage, right? But in these FOIA hearings, the absolute conundrum, kerfuffle that came up is that Chief Cahill, regarding the Newtown police dash cam videos, claimed that when they were sent to Wolf, they were time and date stamped. The allegation is Wolf's equipment's defective. Well, the way to solve that is to go into the court with them and say, okay, you bring the equipment then. When it was Chief Cahill's laptop that Wolf saw it on with Kay. So Chief Cahill's conveniently retired after these FOIA hearings, right? After the railroad job to cover everything up. But what should have happened there was, okay, you know what? Fine. Then let's play the videotape on Chief Cahill's. Let's see if it's time and date stamp. Hello? Well, there's a whole nother package of that where Kay ended up.
Bill, that's it. This gets so elaborate and detailed. I want us to discuss it Friday, and then we'll take callers. Okay.
Let me just finish by saying then, this in one hearing now, we have absolute fraud on the court by the commissioners. You have Chairman Owen Egan present. You have Commissioner Streeter, who sat the first 2 hearings, and you have Kay citing Thomas Hennick, who she complained to about all this, and guess what she heard? All these people were totally complicit. You know what the story is? Well, the FOIA Commission can issue subpoenas, but we're just not in the practice of doing it. So what does that do? That thwarts discovery. How do you compel people?
Bill, can we do this on Friday, okay? Please, is that okay with you?
The last thing you said, though, is very important. So
go ahead, Russ. Emphasize.
Yeah, it's just kind of an admission that we don't care about FOIA. We just can make up any kind of rules we want. Just totally crashes the whole concept of transparency. And I believe is an admission of guilt.
Well, yes. The whole community was involved. This was a massive cover-up. Remember, Eric Holder came down in 2006 and offered the community $114 million to perpetrate this fraud on the American people. And they bought it. They don't want to be exposed.
The larger point is that Jim Fetzer and Wolfgang Halbig laid their butts on the line on all this stuff, and to trash them the way these assholes have done is just really criminal. It's just off the charts.
Much appreciated.
It's just like you guys. I'm kind of learning a lot of new stuff myself, but this is something we got to go revisit. We got to go revisit this whole story.
Yes.
You know, and fuck Victor Hugo. He didn't have anything to do with it.
Yes.
You're out of the picture, Victor. You're irrelevant on that.
Yes.
He's show what was really going on with Sandy Hook, and there's a whole new generation of people out there, maybe even our listeners, that don't know anything about this stuff. So
very good.
Start educating them.
Great points, Russ. The call-in number 608-957-8727, 608-957-8727. We do have a caller on the line from 751 area code. Caller, please give us your first name and state.
Yeah, this is Patrick in Wisconsin.
Go ahead, Patrick.
I wanted to make a little comment about Victor Hugo.
Yeah.
I think the first time I ever heard of the dude, he had done an interview with Germar Rudolph.
Yes.
And if you're not familiar with Germar Rudolph, he did an encyclopedia of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And he shortly after that interview, I think it was the same week, he ended up being put in prison, and he had his life threatened. Germar Rudolph. You should get him. You should get him involved in this conversation and get his testimony of what he was put through with the whole system after that interview took place. And
you're suggesting Victor Hugo was setting up Germar to be, arrested and punished for the interview he did with Victor?
I just find it suspicious that it was just after that interview that he ended up going to prison for a violation that happened many years ago, maybe even decades ago, for all I remember.
Yeah.
But it's very, very timely, very interesting because you're having the similar problem with the man.
Yes.
It sounds like in this regard with what you've been talking about, you and your guests. And I would like to say one more thing about that.
Go ahead.
During that interview, that was the first time I ever had seen his interview. It was months back now on BitChute. And in the interview, Victor Hugo was saying how he was going to have a guest on later in that week with a rabbi, which I find very interesting that you would even interview a Jewish rabbi like that. So just my 2 cents. I wanted to put that out there. You should get Germar Rudolph and talk to him about this situation because it's not good.
Yeah, I like Germar. When Nick Hollerstrom was about to publish his sensational book, I think it's the definitive, exposing the Holocaust hoax called Breaking the Spell, he invited me to write the introduction. And when I authored the introduction, it was Germar who was serving as his editor and suggested a couple tweaks to my introduction. I like Germar. I believe I interviewed him years back, of course, about his discovery that there were no blue stains on the walls, which would have occurred if they actually were using this mild form of cyanide, Zyklon B, in the alleged gas chambers, where, of course, we know none of them could have facilitated the real function as real gas chambers, as Fred Luchter, who is the leading expert, went to some of the camps, studied the facilities, came back with a Luchter report for the trial of Ernst Zundel in Canada in 1988. I thought that was going to put the end to it completely. Robert Fourasson wrote a wonderful piece about the Zundel trials and the sensational Luchter reports. You would have thought that put the end to the whole talk about gas chambers, but they just go on and ignore the facts. They just make it up, lie compounded by lie, and in that tradition we find this guy, Victor Hugo Vaca. I'm very appreciative of your call. Would anyone like to respond here? Say more? Or would you call her?
I'd like to respond.
Go ahead.
I think we need to be objective about this. Germar was prosecuted, arrested, put in prison, persecuted prior. Was it 4 or 5 years? I'm trying to recall, for his excellent reporting as a chemist, following up on the Luther report.
Yeah.
Jake Shields interviewed Germar prior to Victor, and I believe Stu Peters. Stu Peters was even making people aware they could buy the book. So in this regard, Patrick, I appreciate your concern, but when you look at the entirety of it, I don't think it's fair, and it really undermined us to Jim, because there was many other people presenting Germar at that time, along with Victor. So I want to clear that up. Maybe Patrick didn't know.
I would just say I would just say it's suspicious to me, because I don't think Jake Shields or Stu Peters would have a rabbi on to interview. That's all. And it was the last interview before he was arrested, before Germar was arrested.
Patrick, I think it's valuable. I'm glad you called in.
I'll let you all go. You have a good show. God bless you.
Patrick, I don't have another caller, so if you want to add or expand, you're welcome to do that. Tell me, have you had thoughts about Victor Hugo? Have you watched some of these? He packs all of his propaganda in his titles he gives to his shows. I mean, most of them are just defamatory.
What do you think about his videos he does on me and my granddaughter having herpes? What do you think of those videos?
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those videos, just heard your reports about them, and it doesn't, I'm not surprised by it. I just, from what I've heard of him from the few instances.
Hey, hang on. Go ahead, Patrick.
I would just say that I have a very limited experience with listening to him. I'd heard him on with you, Jim, at one point, and then the Germar interview. That's about my only exposure, other than I had heard, say, Andy Hitchcock talk about Victor Hugo on his show, how he had just kind of, Victor had come out of nowhere, more or less, on the scene, and it was just, other than that, I haven't heard very much about this man and what he's doing. It's suspicious to me. Anyone that communicates with rabbis is a suspect to me. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't listen to somebody who interviews rabbis. It's just not. It's not conducive to getting the truth out about what's going on.
You're welcome to stand by. We do have a second caller from 913 area code. Join the conversation, caller. Just give us your first name and state.
First name, John, also known as ex-Gentile from Missouri. I just want to clear the air. I appreciate you guys talking about what you're talking about, but you can put an end to the Jewish debacle by acknowledging where they first lived. You know, they're not the chosen people that are from Israel. Before Israel was created in 1948, they lived in Hitler in Germany. So how can anybody think that they're the chosen? They're not. I mean, the chosen people are the Hebrews. And the Hamashiach, we talk about, the Hebrews know that. And what the Jews have done has hijacked it through the Catholic training, and the Christians have been professionally trained by the Catholics.
They lived in the settlement of Pale, which is sort of eastern Poland, Belarus, Ukraine, and into Russia.
Yeah, the area known as Zakaria in the past. Thus we get the Zakarian mafia, as a designation. I don't think Germany actually played a role here, ex-Gentile, though I heard you assert that.
There's some German Jews, but most of them came from...
Well,
the German Jews ended up leaving even before World War II. A lot of them went to the United States.
Before 1948,
before
1948, the Jews lived in Germany with Hitler. Period. End of story. End of discussion. It's a known fact. You can't sidestep that issue. So they really didn't come from Israel. And then it just so happens right after World War II in 1948, when the United States was forced to create Israel through the Vatican, that's when they were given permission to go over there and flee to that country and take over it and inhibit it. I mean, this is a no-brainer. This is such an easy thing to see. It's all written in our history and documented.
Yeah, okay.
May I make a comment?
Yeah, please, Patrick.
if you go online and you look up the letter from Constantinople from 1489, they had the grand satraps, the Grand Sanhedrin in Constantinople at the time. So it doesn't mean much to say that the Jews, just because you have Ashkenazi Jews and the Sephardic type Jews, it doesn't mean that they're not all part of the same religion. You look at Basel, Switzerland, that's the oldest Jewish ghetto in Europe from the time of the 400s. So they've been all over the place. It doesn't make any sense to me what you just said. That it's just some new thing.
Correct, but their origin, the Jews' origin is not Israel.
Patrick is commenting next, Gentile. Hang on. Go ahead, Patrick.
That's all I had to say. I just know that the Jews are. It goes back to the time of Jesus Christ. They've always been around from that time in parallel with the Christians.
Well, of course.
Well, it actually goes back before that because
hang on.
There was no letter J before 1524.
Let me bring on 864. 864, join the conversation. Just give us your first name and state, please.
Yeah, Mike, this is, I'm in the Carolinas.
Go ahead.
And I think it's only fair to think that as long as Israel has the option of throwing it in everybody's face about the Samson option, I think everybody else ought to have the Samson option too. So let them go ahead and nuke right up anybody who wants to, and go head on, face to face. Enough of Israel's enough. All leadership in Israel should be wiped off the face of the earth, as far as I'm concerned. These are rogue terrorists, savages. They lie, cheat, steal, and murder to get what they want. It's time to give them their comeuppance. That's what they've earned.
Thanks, Mike. Russ, go ahead. You want to comment?
Yeah, right. Enough extortion, exactly. I agree.
Can I jump in here real quick?
If I may, can I make one last comment?
Hang on.
Sorry.
All right.
Go ahead. You, Bill, go ahead.
Okay. For example, there are Orthodox rabbis like Rabbi Moshe Friedman, Rabbi Moshe Friedman says the Holocaust didn't happen. And there's Orthodox rabbis that are totally against Zionism. So I think we have to be objective. We don't know who Victor's guest is going to be. And even if he brought a pro-Israeli rabbi on, he could be doing a point-counterpoint to give a guy a chance to talk and then argue with them. Who knows? I just can't make that assumption because I don't know who the rabbi was, and I don't watch Victor's shows.
Well, here's an idea, too. What decent person walking this earth would ever want to be a Jew with their reputation?
Well, I'm going to finish my point. I want to clarify something for everybody. Obviously, Jim and I were doing shows together. We had disagreements. People do. I dropped off.
By the way, the disagreements had to do with Donald Trump. They had nothing to do with any of these other issues. Go right ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of history I have with the Trump DOJ here in Connecticut. He crushed the task force on corruption. I ended up incarcerated, exposing corruption here. So that's thumbnail version. So what I'm getting at is there was that. Then there was also some misunderstandings. Let's say we're human. We're complicated. We're dealing with many different layers and issues. So point is, Victor was someone, along with Yakim and Russ, who I've been doing shows with. So there was communication thereafter with both Yakim and Victor. Well, I'm talking to people personally now at that point. And there's some strong misunderstandings and, disagreements. So I was expressing them. When I was in X and I was getting massive views of up to 600,000 views on my post, which I was reporting to Jim prior, I never went into X and spewed all this stuff. And when I'm having a disagreement with someone, I'm dialoguing like with Russ or Yakim or Victor, it's off the show. I never went on a show with Victor and just Jim. Do you see what I'm saying? That was me expressing to someone who I thought I could confide in. And what he's done now is he's taken those emails and he's used them as a weapon, right? And first of all, that's not my style, right? And any communication I have in private should stay private. Period.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you add, it's not just you, Bill. It's a bunch of other people. It's Susan Bradford, for example. He's doing that.
Yes.
He just does that constantly. He's done it a little bit with me.
Yes.
It's just really low life behavior to take.
He has no principles, no ethics whatsoever.
Who would ever want to contact the guy? Why would we want to dialogue with him? So the alert needs to go out to the whole truther community if this guy's toxic.
Yeah.
Let me say, Russ, I'm not at the hip of that. You and I were having a lot of disagreements, right? Even in private chat. But here we are today. We worked through it, right? And I think the biggest thing we can do and keep doing is stay focused on the goal of exposing, everything we can and bringing the people together. And it's a great invitation, a great thing we're all looking forward to talking to Todd Callender, having Susan give a chance to talk to her. And it sounded to me like Todd was interested in more than just, he said, I'll platform you. Meaning, he didn't limit it to, he said, we're only going to do one show. We can develop another, like Jim has.
What Victor Hugo has done with his behavior is he's lost his audience because he's hardly getting any views anymore, and he's united all of us.
Well, sometimes
I'd like to
come out of the dumpster fire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I just want to
go, Victor. I think your big plan kind of backfired. And you're going
let me leave one last thought for everybody.
Show up and basically disavow you.
Mike
disavow you.
Mike wants to add a thought. Go ahead.
I just want to leave one last thought with everybody. Don't forget to visit Israel, land of the Christ killers.
That was, they'll put that on all their advertising, all their brochures. Patrick, did you want to add a further?
Ex-Gentile.
Patrick, did you? Go ahead.
I would just like to say everybody have a happy Easter. And I'm gonna hang up and listen.
Good. Why not?
Right.
Ex-Gentile, did you want to add a thought?
Yeah, I'm glad you're fully exposing Donald Trump for who he is. I tried telling you that in the scriptures, Donald Trump is known as the dragon whose deadly wound was healed when he got shot. And that he gives power and authority to the second beast, who is Elon, who exercises the same authority that the first beast has. I'm telling you now, you guys are in a lot of trouble, and I just want to leave you, with that I'm glad you're waking up with Donald Trump, but don't call in RBN and say Jewish gatekeeper, because the Jewish gatekeeper will block you and won't let you say stuff like that about the Jews. I'm telling you now.
Thanks
Good
for
day,
that.
sir.
I think we had the third caller. Did you want to add a final thought too, please? Anyone left out there wants to add a final thought?
I would.
Yeah, Russ. Bill, go ahead.
Okay, the Sandy Hook case, let's say I came on board late. Obviously, Jim and we did the motion to open, motion to recuse. Judge Remington violated procedural aspects of the motion. There's been a lot more since I've been digging into. We're looking forward to reporting on that, let people know what we learned. And any misunderstandings I had between me and Jim and what was happening in all this were viable questions that we bounced back and forth. Hey, listen, we're here now. We're trying to go forward to expose it on another level that this FOIA hearing destroys the credibility of the system.
You got a guy that's really a bull in a china shop as far as the internet is concerned, and he has to be reined in. These platforms have to be held to their terms of service, or the whole internet is going to become nothing but a den of iniquity, defamation, corruption, falsehoods, nothing but lies. Joaquin, would you agree with that?
Yeah, obviously I do. I'm just all about trying to find out the truth and telling the truth. That's my whole thing in life. Because there's so much deception in this world. There's so much evil going on.
Yes.
So that's my focus, is just uncovering the shit going on.
And there's a lot of it. Russ, your final thoughts?
That's all I've got today.
Well, that's good.
You missed my meme, though. Okay, the meme that I got, the meme of the day on my side, we got this old...
want me to make you... I'll make you a host again if you want.
Oh, you take a look real quick. We'll take a look at the meme.
Yeah, that's just fine. There you are, your host, my friend. Go ahead. It hasn't shown up yet. 4chan hacked and Top Country's total post been revealed.
Over on the right, the meme of the day.
Oh, the entire world hates Israel. Let's see why. 6 minutes later, turned into a Hamas, right? I mean, that's what you're talking about. Once you see what's going on. Yep. Thank you. Thanks to the conference.
This is the land of the